Welcome to the SaaS Revolution Show. I'm your host, Alex Theuma, CEO, founder of SaaStock. Delighted to be joined today by Jamie Akhtar, who is the CEO, co-founder of CyberSmart. Welcome, Jamie, to the podcast. How are you doing?
Thank you, Alex. Yeah, good to see you again.
Yeah, good to see you. I understand you are only just back from Finland and Lapland. How was that? Why were you there? You went to see the reindeers, Northern Lights. What's cooking? I was actually there myself a couple of days ago, so maybe we were there for similar reasons.
Yeah, I saw you near Santa's workshop.
Yeah, I'm Santa.
We're obviously both there in for Slush, which is, I think they brand it as the largest gathering of venture capital and startups in Europe. But it is a fantastic place to network, to see what's going on in the space. So I did that. I actually landed on my birthday, and my wife insisted that she comes and visits me, and that I can't spend my birthday alone. I always said I've got nothing more I'd rather than go to a tech conference for my birthday. Yeah. So she had other plans. She came out and she booked a trip to the north of Finland. So you fly about 2 hours north to the middle of nowhere. It's actually in the Arctic Circle. And it was incredible. Spent a few days on riding reindeer, huskies, snowmobiles. We saw the Northern Lights, which is a big deal. Oh, it's quite difficult, actually. They're only there for a few minutes.
Yes.
And Cybus are building or breaking stuff, basically. Deeply passionate about technology, the impact it can bring to the world in many, many different aspects as well. And there's a lot of talk about generative AI and what that can do to the world. And obviously, before that, there was technology itself and the internet and all that value that it's brought. So I've been obsessed with this field for quite a long time, and that's really kind of shaped my worldview and my place in the world, really, which is, and it's as cheesy as it sounds, I do really feel like I'd like to make an impact and a difference and a positive, put a positive impact into the world when I leave this place. Mm-hmm. So I think that shaped a lot of my view. Probably fun fact, I guess, is I've never been employed by anyone else's company, so I always started my own businesses. Okay. I think that, again, shapes my worldview quite a lot. Ultimately, it means that I'm now really focused on stuff that I care about deeply, working with people I really like in order to make that difference. Doesn't make that journey or that challenge any easier. It simply makes it more enjoyable along the way.
How many businesses did you found before CyberSmart? When did you start your first business? What was it, and how many?
Oh, that is a good question. I haven't really thought or counted, and I guess you can call them ventures probably instead of businesses. I remember being back in school actually, and seeing this, advent of the floppy disk advent of the USB, and the fact that it would replace floppy. So I remember printing out this poster that had like 100 floppy disks stacked on top of each other, and a USB drive next to it, and with the strapline, which would you rather carry around? So that was one of my first ventures. But I guess there's a lot of bits here and there along the way, from a digital agency through software development, digital marketing, set up a business with two different partners, one in the US, one in Hong Kong. Mm-hmm. So that was quite interesting. I'd say probably the first half of my career really was about helping to make other people's dreams come true. Really, I mean, and that's probably a bit of a grandiose explanation, but it's essentially building stuff for other people, and that does have an impact to them. Yeah. But it really was never focused on what can I build, what can I create in the world, and it took quite a while for me to figure out what that was. But kind of it is the founding story really for CyberSmart.
Yeah. Okay, so from building and making other people's dreams come true, to deciding that you want to build for yourself, and deciding on CyberSmart. Why particularly cyber? Like, first of all, like what is CyberSmart? What does it do? And then why why did you decide to do it? Why are you the best person to build this business?
Lots of interesting questions. CyberSmart is essentially our mission is protect and empower SMEs. We build technology that helps small businesses to understand and manage their cyber risk. We believe it's the only way really for small business cybersecurity going forward. I won't bore you with kind of all the kind of macro and the problem space. I'm sure everyone's broadly aware of cyber risk. The challenge for most small businesses, they just don't have the time, resources, expertise in order to deal with it. Yet they still need to deal with it. And we just saw back then, 7 years ago, as we see today, most of the alternatives and substitutes are not suitable for that segment of the market. So I think we're uniquely placed to solve that, because that's all we do. All we think about is how we solve for that product problem, as well as the go-to-market problem and the unit economics. So by cracking those two aspects, it allows us to solve it better than anyone else who's focusing on cybersecurity. It's far easier to serve the mid-market or the enterprise than it is to serve the small business, but we think there's a massive prize if you can crack that part.
All right, fantastic. And then so what about, like, I don't know, I can't remember if you said, like, when the company was founded, so how long have you been running it? What data can you share about the company? Where are you now? How many people, have you raised? Are you bootstrapped, venture backed? Given maybe that you're Slush, sort of guessing that you're venture backed, and just tell us a little, paint us a little picture about where the business is.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So we come up to 7 years old. That's like a dinosaur in startup.
Yeah. Is it still a startup at 7? It is already.
It is. Yeah, it is. I mean, there's that whole definition of what you are. I think for us, it's the key is we've nowhere near accomplished what we set out to achieve. 1% of 1%, I guess. A lot of founders would say that. I think when you're trying to do something that's really impactful, it's always going to be the case. So yeah, coming up to 7 years old, we've raised quite a lot of funding rounds in total, including bridge rounds and all the things in between, Angel 1, Angel 2, over 10 funding rounds, about £20 million. Mm-hmm. We closed our Series B earlier on this year. We've got about 60 investors on our cap table. About 5 of those are institutional investors. Mm-hmm. So, and surprisingly, don't spend a huge amount of time on investor relations. Okay. I can give you a secret to that later on. Yeah, I can give it to you now.
Give it to me now. Like, so that it's a lot of investors on the cap table. So my questions are, like, how do you manage that? Because I imagine, well, you're saying it's easy. So what's the secret? And then I guess, I don't know if you're happy to share, but you've done 10 rounds, 60 investors. How has that left you kind of in terms of ownership and control of the business, like voting rights, etc., that sort of thing?
So yeah, regular, consistent updates.
When you say regular, is that monthly?
Every single month, yeah. I mean, you could probably do them every 2 months if you wanted. I think months is a good habit, a good routine to get into. Every single month, basic high level updates across the business, product, go to market, financials, people, has evolved over time. Been doing that for probably 50 plus months without missing a beat, even when I had COVID. Really, really important. I think it's also good discipline. The thing that's kept it going is, well, twofold. One, it provides that communication layer to all of our shareholders, and I think that's really important. It saves you a huge amount of time in answering ad hoc questions, repeating yourself on what is our strategy, what's our plan, what's our focus, where are we struggling. So it saves you time there. It also means that they can lean in and provide you support. In the earlier days, this was hugely helpful and beneficial. I also find it very useful for myself and the team, just to look back, even on a month period, you'll be surprised at just how much things move. And I replay the same update to the team the following Monday. So that creates transparency. It creates a unified view of what we're trying to do and what we're saying to our investors, and keeps everyone on the same page. I'd say that's probably been the secret weapon. It's not that difficult. If you've got somewhere we can share them, I'm happy to share a template or...
Yeah, that'd be great. We can share a link to that. And then in terms of like, has there been then a lot of dilution for yourself, and how's that sort of like impacted in any way, positively or negatively?
Yeah, I mean, that's inevitable. I still have I guess a meaningful share, in my opinion, and that ultimately comes down to if that pie is growing bigger, right? And versus how much of it you have. I think the other part of that is control. And I think when you're at this stage, A, B, I think the investors very much lean on the management team to steer the direction of the company, to kind of think through some of the challenging parts of its strategy or resourcing, performance. All those kind of aspects really are reliant on the management team to. So I think we've got a super supportive investment board. We're also very picky in our investors, and I think that's really important for a founder, is find people that you really do want to work with, that you think will value the business. And so, at a later stage, actually, you might someone who's actually going to help you more with the kind of directional and the strategy. For us, it's always been about finding people that believe in what we believe and will support us, and basically make sure we don't run headfirst off a cliff versus get involved in the business and run it for us. So yeah, we've got fantastic investors. Really happy to have them behind us.
And can you share? So you raised 20 million, and can you share like in terms of like how many people and what your ARR is? And also, I know only because you typed it in the notes, but actually, I think it was mentioned at the SFM retreat that you've got a pretty good net retention revenue. So like let's talk about that one at the end and why it's so good.
Yeah, so we're just approaching 5 million ARR. We passed it in dollars, approaching it in pounds.
Congrats.
Probably there in euros. Depends what the conversion rate is. We're about 65 people, broadly split, about a third on our go-to-market. So essentially, primarily serving the channel partners we work with. So we work with over 800 channel partners. They are MSPs and resellers, really interesting aspect of our business. A third of that is building, or about 40% is building our product. So essentially making our tech work and bringing value to our customers. That's a really important part of what we do, because we are a product-led in terms of our approach, our philosophy, and the value we bring. And then the rest of it is supporting infrastructure, essentially realizing the value of our revenue, making sure we've got the operations in place, which I'm happy to come back to. I think that's probably one of the big aspects of how you succeed.
And your NRR, so 120%, which is very solid. How you do, especially with SMEs, right? I think that's probably like quite difficult to achieve. I would imagine.
Yeah, it was 160 last year, so it's taken a hit, and we actually expect it to go back up. big aspect of that is we sell through the channel, which isn't by any means an easy thing to do or set up. It's not just switch it on and go. You have to invest a lot of time to get it right. And I still say we've got a long way to go to really perfecting that. That's a big aspect of it, because if you improve the value to a partner, they can truly open doors for you and deliver value year over year consistently. So that's a big aspect of that. Gross revenue retention is over 90% as well. Like really understanding the market and the people you're building for, and focusing on those is what leads to great unit economics.
Why did you decide to sell through the channel? Because I think it's sort of rare, becoming a little bit more popular. I think quite difficult to do in some instances. So how did you decide that's going to be your go-to-market model?
For us, it's testing experimentation over many years. We actually ran a dual go-to-market approach. And then as we started to grow the company and scale, we realized that there was some inherent limitations in the direct. The unit economics were nowhere near as good. So we decided to pivot all our focus, resource, effort onto channel. That was a strategic shift that we learned from following the data.
Okay. Yeah, like obviously you were at 65 people, and I know that you did a kind of like behind the curtain or behind closed doors kind of session with the SaaStock founder members, of which you're a SFM member, where you talked a little bit about the various stages of building a company. But you're given that that was just sort of like members only, and there obviously were Chatham House rules within that. You have, which I'm happy to say, said that you're happy to kind of like share some of this, kind of publicly, and your thoughts around the various stages of building a company. So tell us, what are the stages? If you're at 65 people and at 5 million ARR, how many stages, how many like different CyberSmarts have there been?
Probably 7, I guess. It does feel like a completely different company year on year, and part of that is we got different people. Part of it is like you learn and you adapt and you grow. I think there's one thing I read in a book, which I'll come back to in a little bit later on, but it was about kind of how communication hierarchy works as you grow. And I mean, a lot of founders experience this. You've got 10 people, you're working in the same office. Like everybody knows everything about what's going on at the company. You all know what customers are coming on, where the product's at, what challenges you've got, where the fundraising at. Everyone is on the same page all of the time. As you start to grow past 10, maybe 20, if you've got some really good stuff in place, that you start to lose that closeness and kind of proximity to information, either as a founder or leader of the business or as an employee. And therefore, it starts to become a little bit more fragmented, and you kind of need to rebuild communications hierarchy again at that point, which is like, okay, how do we communicate stuff? Not everybody needs to know everything. Not everybody needs to be in all the same meetings. If doing this remote is even harder. By the way, like I think every single company in the world struggles with communication.
Are you fully remote?
We're remote first, so 95% plus. There's still massive value in having physical connection. So we encourage that. We meet as a team, like my immediate team every week. So I'm still regularly in touch, but by default, we let people get on with their roles. And if they need to, they can come together physically. And then the other stage, I'd say, is once you get past about 50 people, then we've had to rebuild that all again, because then you start to think about the middle layer. And I guess naively at first we're like, we just have a super flat hierarchy. We just want everyone to be able to contribute to our mission and what we're doing. And if anyone has an issue, they just raise it directly. But then those kind of things cracks start to break. Like you can't just have someone heard something on the phone with a customer and they go and tell the product and engineering team to go change the spec, right? It just starts to melt pretty quickly. So you have to have systems and processes for getting feedback, for like deciding on where to focus on, deciding how reporting should work. We did a piece recently on how do we think about strategic planning at CyberSmart, because strategic planning for a Fortune 500 is very different to a 6-month-old company with 5 people. Both are equally important. Just the level of detail and the things you can consider and the amount of risks in the plan is going to be very different. So we basically create our own framework on how this is what we expect when we say strategic planning.
Tell me, your senior leadership team, so how many people report into you at the moment?
At the moment, that's a good question. 4.
Okay, that's a good number.
Yeah.
And then how many of those 4 were with the company at the beginning or in the first 10 employees? Any of them?
None of them, no.
None of them.
Yeah.
When did you hire them? When did you bring them in?
The person I worked closest with, our CFO, and we went for a big leadership change in Q3. Essentially, just putting in place the skills we need for our Series C and beyond. Which is, we already talked about the complete shift in our go-to-market. Yeah. So bringing in someone who really has that channel experience. That's actually a hire we're currently filling at the minute. So it will go up. The reports, that is. Oh. And essentially it's kind of looking at, and part of it is like building between milestones, like building the team, the systems, the processes, the go-to-market. And someone told me, I can't remember who told it, I wish I could attribute it. It was essentially thinking about what do we need to do and where do we need to get, and then think about how do we need to get there. Uh-huh. And that can lead to some very, very difficult people decisions in order to build that company. But ultimately, you need to always come back to like, why are we here? What are we doing this for? What's the purpose of our company? Where do we want to get to? And kind of start from the end and work backwards, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, they do. They do say that. Similarly, we're going through a similar process, and it's like the 3-year sort of plan for us for the next 3 years, and it's starting where do we want to be in 3 years' time, right? And then working your way backwards to how do we get there, to then looking at what does next year look like, because obviously then that will feed into the 3-year plan, and then with that, so if you're starting with like the goal in mind, or you're at 5 million and you have your whatever the next big milestone might be, it could be 10 or 20. Are you then looking at hiring people? Like, is it a prerequisite that people have done that, like where you're going in terms of what you need? Like when you're looking, you talked to quite a bit there about sort of like mission and purpose, and like I think having obviously like mission driven people, talented people, all these things that are very important. But like when you're at 5 and you want to get to 20, and you're hiring somebody for, I don't know, it's like the CRO position. If they've done it before, is that what is one of the first things that you're kind of looking for, or a requirement, or do you think about things differently?
Yeah, I think at our stage, like Series B, that's far more relevant and important. Yeah. But you really need people coming in to hit the ground running. So having the expertise, having the kind of pattern recognition on what not to do, because if you waste a quarter or 2, that can be very, very expensive. It eats into your runway, it eats into your plan. It can lead to all kinds of challenges. So I think pretty much at this stage, you're looking at people that have been there, done that experience. I'd say earlier stage, there's a far greater bias towards capability and an attitude. You can pretty much get anyone, and there's probably thousands of founder stories where they started a company with someone they knew who was a nice person, right? But they both believed in the same thing could happen, and therefore great things did happen. And then grit, determination, ability to learn quickly, the ability to execute on the plan and adapt when needed is far, far greater. That's going to determine your success versus like, oh yeah, I ran a similar company for 10 years.
Yeah, no, agree. And what about in terms of like, you've got then these great people on board, or people that you hope are going to be great. How do you think about performance and, setting goals, hitting goals, getting the team to perform day in, weekly, monthly, etc.? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I can talk a bit about what we've done to date and a little bit about what we're planning to do, because there is a a gear shift effectively. We just brought in a VP of people who's reviewing this whole area in terms of aligning individual expectations and goals to what the company's trying to achieve. And I think that's a far more sophisticated approach. What we've learned from in the past is clarity and expectations about what people should and shouldn't do. You can't over communicate this. It's here's what we're trying to do as a company this year. Here's what we're trying to do this quarter, this month, this week, and here's what we should do today. Like getting it all the way down to that detail and making sure everyone's really clear on how they contribute towards that, I think is super important. And that's been pretty much our ethos today, is hire good people, give them the tools they need, support them, and then let them get on with their roles. Now that's a bit of a balancing act, because if you just let people get on and you check in once a month, then that might not be enough. But making sure that they're fully equipped to succeed, I think is really, really important. Like we talked a little bit about it when we talked about remote first, is that requires a completely different level of trust with your team and engagement. And you need a lot of different mechanisms in order to influence that. But ultimately, it comes down to looking at what people are delivering versus what they're doing.
Yeah.
And we've got presenteeism, etc. We've got a lot of companies that are considering hybrid or return to office. Mm-hmm. In those cases, I think it may make some sense. I'm still a bit perplexed around that. So maybe you got another podcast I can listen to that helps to enlighten that debate.
On presenteeism, in terms of like some tools saying like, are you online, or are you doing 8 hours a day, that sort of thing?
No, more in relation to the return to work. I just really don't understand what's going through those leaders' heads, or what data they're looking at that I'm not seeing that indicates that that's a good thing, because everything I hear, see, observe is counter to that. The only explanation, I guess, rational explanation, is either they don't trust their team, or they don't have the tools and mechanisms to actually measure output and productivity, or ultimately it is less effective. I think we've managed to strike a good balance. It's
interesting, and like, I mean, ourselves, we're remote first. We go in 1 day a week, but it's kind of like not mandatory. So those that kind of want to go in and see the colleagues do. And we do find, that day it's great. It's really useful. Like we're connecting. It does really help. I think, with culture, and a little bit, I think, around like motivation as well. You do generally feel a little bit more buoyant in some ways. And for me, it breaks up the week. I love working from home. Like personally, I have my routine. I actually probably do more work and can do more deep work than when I'm in the office. So I love that, and I think there are perhaps a bunch of founders that maybe they're, I don't know, less sort of trusting around our people doing work, and I think there's that psychological element of it. So probably those that are less trusting and have probably made that move to go back into the office, but probably not in all cases. So I think certainly in some industries, and I know like banking, they've all said like you've got to come back in and so on, and perhaps others are just kind of following the trend. And in many cases as well, I know a lot, as you might know as well, have spent a lot on offices and long-term leases and contracts, and they want to get their money's worth, right? And they don't want to see it vacant. So I think there's this whole combination, and I think I'm not sure like anyone's really tried figured it out, but I think it is nice, and the viewpoints are like, okay, let's trust people like adults, right? And if you're doing the work, if you're getting the results, then that's fine. If we're not getting the results, maybe things need to change, And like for us also, we've been running a 4-day work week for a few years now, since COVID, but we only do it for 6 months a year. And we have grown this year, but we also set ambitious targets, and the market's slightly different. And so often like our OKRs in terms of where we end up hasn't been quite where we want it to be. So we are considering, or something we will consider, is actually, is a 4-day work week really working for us? And, if we're going to bring back that, extra day, are we going to be more productive and be better at, hitting our targets. So things like that. So I think it's worth like trying things and seeing how it goes. Everyone loves their Friday off, right? But if you're not hitting targets, it's one of these things that you've got to review.
Yeah, definitely open a can of worms there,
Yeah,
Alex.
yeah.
It's probably an entire podcast.
It is. I mean, well, look, there's entire podcasts about the channel, selling to the channel that I want to do, and more podcasts on this return to work, right? For sure. But we don't have time to do several podcasts, so certainly not today, and I'm conscious of time. So I want to move into the quick fire round, Jamie. So tell me...
one last point on that is, I guess, in all cases, whether it's a 4-day work week or remote first in office, it's about measuring outputs versus inputs.
Yeah.
And I think that's the fundamental shift. It's even less about trust than it is being able to measure the impact that your team's having in their work. And then it doesn't really matter where they work, when they work, how they work.
As a CEO, as a founder of the business then, so if you've got a sales guy or girl that is hitting their numbers, but you feel that maybe they're like working like 50% capacity, but just still hitting their numbers, do you care? Or would you say, well, look, if they're working 100% of capacity, you would be getting 150% or 200%, right? So what is your thoughts around that? Because if you're looking at measuring the output is 100%, but then you're like, well, do I care what they're doing or what time they start work and how many hours a day that they work? Like, what's your viewpoint in that scenario?
It's a funny hypothetical situation. The more likely one actually is someone's working 100, maybe 120%, and they're not delivering.
Yeah.
And then it's kind of like, why is that? However, I think, in the first case, I think, that's fine as long as that expectation is agreed and aligned. And I would focus more on employee engagement in that situation. Yeah. It's like, let's make sure people are engaged. And actually, it's not about hitting the target or hitting the quota. It's actually about like moving the company forward in a way that makes sense for them and their progression. I think there's a way you can essentially round out their role and maybe spend the other 50% time being a better salesperson so they can grow. In the other scenario where actually, as far as you know, everyone, the individual's doing as much as they possibly can, or the team, and yet they're not hitting the target, that's a far harder one to manage and support. And I think in that's where you need the mechanisms to really understand, like, well, what assumptions are we making here? Do people have everything they need? Maybe let's do a reset. Let's revisit our plan. So yeah, those are all good questions.
Another podcast set.
Yeah.
All right, let's get into this quick fire round then. So tell me, Jamie, what one thing has moved the needle the most for you in your career?
I'd say finding something you are deeply passionate about. The reason being, like, founding a company is a decade-long pursuit. Mm-hmm. We started CyberSmart, so it's great. We'll hit our goals in year 1 of 1 million customers by year 2. We'll exit by year 3. The reality is, it obviously takes far longer and is far more effort than you can ever imagine.
Yeah,
and it also gets harder. One of the things is kind of this myth we tell ourselves. It's like, oh yeah, we just do this, we just hire this person, or we just raise this money, and then everything's going to become easier, right? Like, I'm not going to have to do all that. But actually, your challenges just shift. And they in many ways become more difficult because you're doing stuff that you've never done before. So ultimately, for me, it's been about being passionate about. I literally have a mouse mat that says I love Mondays, my favorite day of the week. Like, I'm super passionate about what we do and the people we work with, and I think that's allowed me to move the needle the most. Yeah.
No, I love that. And similar. I mean, I wonder if I would hope it's the same for many founders. That they're obviously doing what they're doing because they love what they're doing. And likewise, I mean, I would say for the majority of the time, and be running SaaStock for 8 years, I never have that, fear or anxiety on a Sunday about, going back into work on a Monday. I look forward to seeing my colleagues and the week that's ahead and the things that we can achieve. So maybe I need to get myself a mouse mat as well. But what about
the mouse mat's a manifestation versus it's not like you get it and then you start to love Mondays.
I love Mondays, so maybe I need a mouse mat which says I love Mondays because it's true. I don't need to manifest it. I need to get something that manifests like I want to move to Ibiza, so maybe I need to get a mouse mat with like I love Ibiza on it or something like that. I must work harder. What is the best advice you have received?
I remember probably the one I remember the most is what Reshma from Seedcamp said to me 7 years ago, which was a founder only has 2 jobs: to raise money and hire good people. Now, what I take from that, actually, because I actually think a founder has many more jobs than that. You've got to set the vision. You've obviously need to do all that work before you hire those people or you raise any of that money. So it's far broader, and it also evolves over time. But the big takeaway there is actually, as a founder, it's really important to constantly ask, like, where should I be focusing my time and energy? And what, even I'm doing this right now as I'm going through my job description, and I'm like, okay, is that my responsibility, or is that CFO, or is that CCO, or is that, VP of people? Because traditionally, I've done a lot. So it's taking off those hats really to focus on the stuff only you can do uniquely. So yeah, take that with a pinch of salt.
I agree. I agree with you. I guess Reshma's was a better soundbite, right? You can imagine. Well, what about biggest mistake you've made and lesson learned, or like a mistake that you want to kind of call out? I mean, everybody makes mistakes, and lesson learned from that, and that hopefully you didn't repeat it.
I actually can't think of like a single like catastrophic event. I'd probably say the thing that most catches up on me is not taking decisions quick enough. And I think that's probably something to always be mindful of as a founder. Like you do have time pressure, especially if you're venture backed. And like, if you know something isn't right, just take the decision. If it's a 2-way decision, just take the decision. So I think that's an important thing to constantly remind yourself of. I can't really think of something that was like catastrophic. I made a lot of very difficult decisions, but not really big mistakes.
Yep.
I guess we're still alive, so
still alive. 5 million ARR.
Nothing life threatening. Yeah, nothing life threatening yet.
All right. What about favorite book on business and why? What are you currently reading? Also,
probably the one that I remember the most on startup journey was a book called Founder CEO. It's actually free on Google Docs.
Okay.
I think there's a copy on Amazon as well. Founder CEO. I just think it's a really nice book when I was talking about the stage of the company, communication hierarchy, a lot of those concepts are there in black and white, and you're like, oh yeah, actually I can relate to that. So I think if you haven't read it, it's a good read.
Do you know who the author
it's fairly
is?
Short. I'm not sure.
Okay, we'll find it. We'll dig it out, and we'll drop a link in on the on the post on this one. And what about currently reading?
Amp It Up. I got given this by someone. It's really good. It's from the Snowflake CEO previously.
Frank Slootman. Yep.
Just a really interesting book. Extremely interesting leadership style.
Yep.
To see what I mean by that, you'll probably have to read it. Yeah, it's definitely good. You probably finish it in about 4 hours. It's a fairly light book as well.
Yeah, no, very good book. I think I read that one last year, I believe. What do you do for mental health and wellness? Obviously, you mentioned you were just had a little short break in the north of Finland. But tell me a little bit about your mental health wellness routine.
For me, it all comes down to routine. Like, I'm super disciplined in everything. And I've got like every single fitness gadget tracker possible, even a smart water bottle. So like Aura, Whoop, like heart rate monitors, Apple, everything possible is being monitored and measured. That aside, ultimately comes down to like having a routine when it comes go to sleep, what time do you stop work. It's very important to stop work at some point in the day, and I close my laptop and I don't do anything after that point. And wind down. Waking up, for me, it's early and consistent, but for other people it might be different. Every day, wake up, do some exercise. All the other stuff is really kind of nice on top of that, making sure that you are sleeping well, you make good decisions.
So what time are you shutting down the laptop and stopping work and no longer checking emails? What time do you go to bed? What time do you wake up?
Quite early, actually, about 6:30, 7 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, this is, I guess, more recent development. The first few years is probably working 6.5 to 7 days a week. and then drop that down to 6, and then to 5.5. Now I do 5 plus Sunday fun day, as I like to call it, which is essentially doing stuff I'm not allowed to do in the week because it's not part of my core role. And that can be, product stuff, things that I'm interested in, writing a thought piece. So it's stuff that's still relevant to the company, but not stuff that I would normally consider my job description.
Uh-huh. And so if you're waking at like 6:30, what time do you go to bed then? 10?
10 o'clock, yeah.
10 o'clock. Okay, so you get a good 8 hours sleep or so.
And stopping work about 6:37 as well.
Yeah.
I love cooking too. That's a good way of me winding down, switching gears, thinking about something else. My wife calls me a tornado chef because I just get in the kitchen like Tasmanian devil, and there's just
you like cooking everywhere. But not cleaning up after yourself, or I don't know. No?
Yeah, I get so immersed in it. Yeah. I'm just like, get a bit of this, get a bit of that, throw that in, and then by the end of it, I've made like 2 plates of delicious food, but the kitchen is a mess.
Well, I find actually, so I love cooking as well, and it's not the only thing, but it's definitely like if I jump on the Peloton, for instance, right, I still think about work on a 30-minute or 45-minute, bike ride or.
You're not going hard enough, Alex. I've got a Peloton. I don't think about work.
Oh, okay. I can. I switch off and into the. I'm not always like listening to the trainer, but like if I'm cooking, like that's one thing that I really focus on, and I'm not thinking about work, so it really, really relaxes me. So that's why I like doing it.
It's very fair, but seriously, you need to work harder on the Peloton.
Okay, all right.
If you set yourself a goal, like your people. And when you're at 90% max heart rate, Alex, you can't think about anything apart from how much pain you're in.
Yeah. I think I am doing like steady state. I used to do like try and beat my PB, but I'm just doing like endurance stuff and just kind of like taking it in zone 3, taking it easy, just getting my cardio in. So maybe that's it. What about, also I wanted to ask, because we mentioned a couple of times you sort of dropped in, but you joined the SaaStock founder membership. You were out at our Mykonos retreat earlier this year, which was fun. It's where I really got to know you. I guess why did you join? What's been the most sort of memorable, valuable moment for you so far?
Yeah, I think as a founder, it's really important to seek out that community. Look, you've probably heard it 100 times before, but it can be very lonely. Not because you're not surrounded by people that believe in what you believe in, but some of the decisions, some of the way that you think, you really need other people that have been in that same place, and also just to ask stupid questions like, hey, I'm thinking about this, and what do you think? So having other people around you that have been through similar challenges that can share their experience too. People that are ahead of you in stages, to learn from them. Also people that are just behind you, that have just started their journeys, to share with them. That sharing actually gets you to kind of compound your thinking and articulate in a way that's very useful for yourself and others. So I think community is the main reason, always looking for groups like that. Probably the biggest thing I've got out of it was actually the retreat. I think you just can't beat physically being in, for a few days in the same place as people. You just go into these conversations. It's funny because it happens in meetings as well. And you'll be there for like an hour and a half meeting, and actually it's the last like 20, 30 minutes where you really get to the meat of the topic. And that happens on these retreats too. So I thought it was super valuable, and looking forward to the next one in Marrakesh.
Yep.
It's good.
It's good stuff. Well, we're grateful that you're part of the growing SaaStock founder membership community. And so as we come to the end of the show, Jamie, like people want to kind of reach out to you, they've got any questions, they want to talk about channel sales or, 90% heart rate, on the Peloton or wherever it is. Where can they find you? Where like what platform are you kind of mostly on? And also they're interested about CyberSmart as well.
They can drop me a message on LinkedIn, Jamie Akhtar. can drop me an email, jamie@cybersmart.co.uk. They can probably connect with me on Peloton if you want to,
I'm
see how we get.
I'm going to spy on you on Peloton, so that's something. If I remember to do that as well. So, but I'm probably not at the level that you're at as well. But Jamie, look, it's been a really great conversation. We've covered I think everything, and so really appreciate you coming on, sharing. Looking forward to hopefully seeing you before the Marrakesh retreat. But thank you so much, Jamie Akhtar, CEO and founder of CyberSmart, for being a great guest on the SaaS Revolution Show today.
Thank you, Alex.